Oh, then do it. Okay, everybody, here we go. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We're going to begin with a nigun, a wordless melody. It's called Lincoln's Nigun, and you'll hear it. It's reminiscent of something we might have heard in the 1850s and 60s, sort of a Civil War chant. We thought it might be fitting as we celebrate this Shabbat and we honor Veterans Day, which was yesterday. So just join us on Yai Lai, Yai Didi Dai, Bye Bye Bye, whatever feels right. Here's Lincoln's Nigun.
Shabbat Shalom. It is so wonderful to see you here in our sanctuary. And for all of those who are joining us from home, thank you so much for spending Shabbat with us virtually. We hope you'll be able to be in our sanctuary with us one of these days soon. There's so much to celebrate and so much to be grateful for. And as Cantor Emma just mentioned, with Veterans Day yesterday, we're grateful for all those who have sacrificed on behalf of our nation. I know there are some people in the room here who are veterans. Just raise your hand up high if you served. Thank you for your service. I myself was born at the United States Air Force Academy. My dad was in the Air Force. So we're grateful to all of those who have served, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later on in our service tonight. We're going to continue with candle lighting, and you can find that on page 2 of your prayer book. Wendy and Brooke are coming up to light our Shabbat candles. Those of you at home, feel free to light your Shabbat candles now along with us.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
welcome the Sabbath bride with these words of Lecha Dodi. You can find them on page 20, this beautiful and romantic image of us anticipating Shabbat like a groom or a bride would anticipate greeting one another.
Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad Hishmianu el ha'miyuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad l'shem u'tiferet v'lithilah Lecha Dodi, Yalalalai likrat kala, Yalalalai penei Shabbat, penei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat, lechu v'nelcha, ki b'kol מקדם נסוחה סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה יאי לי לי יאללה לי Lecha Dodi יאללה לי לקראת כלה יאללה פני שבת Penei Shabbat nekabela. Boi v'shalom ateret bala Gam b'simcha u'v'tzola Toch emunei am segula Boi chala Yai lai lai Lecha Dodi Yalalalai likrat kala Yalalalai penei Shabbat nekabela Yalalalai Lecha Dodi Yalalalai likrat kala Yalalalai penei Shabbat nekabela. You can be seated. Psalm 92, Tov Lehodot, is found on page 22, and we're honored to have a son of our congregation, Brandon Levin, join us on the bima. These words are special for the Sabbath day, and they remind us that this is a time to say thank you. Tov Lehodot Ladonai, it is good to give thanks to God for the gift of Shabbat.
Tov lehodot l'Adonai ולזמר לשמך עליון, להגיד בבוקר חסדך ואמונתך באלות. טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך עליון, להגיד בבוקר חסדך ואמונתך בלילות. הלל אסור והלל נבא, הלל היגיון וכינור, כי שימחתני אדוני בתולך במעשה ידיך ארנן. טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך עליון, להגיד בבוקר חסדך ואמונתך בלילות. טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך עליון, להגיד בבוקר חסדך ואמונתך בלילות. ואמונתך בלילות.
We'll invite you to rise as we continue with our call to worship, the Baruch, which can be found on page 30.
Adonai,
Et Adonai,
Amevorach,
Amevorach,
Baruch Adonai,
Baruch Adonai,
Amevorach,
Amevorach,
Le'olam,
Le'olam,
Va'ed.
Va'ed.
Yai lai lai lai, lai lai la lai, yai lai 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 la lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai la lai, yai lai 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 lai.
Baruchu et Adonai, Amevorach.
Baruch et Adonai Hamevorach, Baruch Adonai Hamevorach, Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai Hamevorach, Le'olam Va'ed. Yai lai lai lai, yai lai la lai, yai lai 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 la lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai la lai, yai lai lai lai, lai lai.
You may be seated. You'll find our prayer for evening which we're getting a lot of dark hours these days. So this prayer is probably extra important this time of year. We're on page 30. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim. Bechokma poteach she'arim ובתבונה משנה איתי ומחליף את הזמנים ומסדר את הכוכבים במשמרותיהם ברקיע כרצונו, ברקיע כרצונו. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בדברו מעריב ערבים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בדברו מעריב ערבים.
You'll find the Shema, that watchword of our faith, that central prayer of ours on page 34. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam va'ed.
Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. Micha Mocha, our prayer of freedom on page 40.
Yai kamocha ba'ilim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh, nora tehilot, osefele, osefele. מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע הים לפני משה ומרים, זה אלינו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. יאי לי 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 יאי לי 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 יאי לי 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 יאי לי לי amen.
We continue with Vishamru, a special prayer for the Sabbath day on page 44.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם לדורותם ברית עולם.
ביני ובין בני ישראל עוד היא לעולם.
There is a sign for all time between me and the people of Israel. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם לדורותם ברית עולם.
כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ.
For in 6 days Adonai made heaven and earth. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש.
And on the seventh day, God ceased from work and was renewed. Vishamru bnei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם ברית עולם, לדורותם ברית עולם.
We'll turn now to page 253. Our prayer of healing. Tonight we're thinking of all our friends and loved ones who are in need of healing, and particularly the veterans in our nation who need our care, our love, and our support. Page 253, Misha Berach. Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor Abraham Limotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misha Berach Imotenu Mekor Abraham Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
On Friday evenings, our Amidah prayer is said silently. The words to the traditional Friday night Amidah begin on page 48 in your prayer book. On the right-hand side of the page are those traditional prayers. On the left-hand side are different readings that are inspired by those prayers. If you're joining from home, feel free to add, and those of you who are here, add your own prayers, the prayers of the heart. I'll invite you, as you're able, to please rise and take a few moments of silence to give thanks and praise for the blessings that we are able to enjoy, and also to ask God for the most worthy things that we need for ourselves, our community, and our world.
makes peace in the heavens descend on us, and the world will say Amen. May the one who makes peace in the heavens descend on us, and the world will say Amen. 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 Descend on us, and the world will say Amen. May the one who makes peace in the heavens descend on us, and the world will say Amen.
Oh, say shalom, bimromov. We all say shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Amen. Amen. Ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Oseh shalom bimromov. We all say shalom aleinu. Amen. Amen. Ve'al kol yoshvei tevel.
May the one who makes peace in the heavens descend on us, and the world will say Amen.
Thank you so much, Cantor, and thank you, Brandon. This past Tuesday and Wednesday marked the 83rd anniversary of Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. It was an organized, state-sponsored set of actions that were perpetrated against Jews in Germany. It included the destruction of Jewish businesses, and over 1,000 synagogues were set on fire. There were countless assaults on Jewish bodies, resulting in more than 100 deaths. As an American Jewish community, we are, I think, in the midst of a reckoning about the anti-Semitism that we're witnessing today here in Europe, around the world. And most painfully and powerfully, since the massacre in Pittsburgh in 2018, and then again in Poway just 6 months later, many of us are questioning whether or not America is truly different. Is America truly unique when it comes to the world's oldest hatred? I've written about this repeatedly, and I've spoken about it from this bima, as have other members of our clergy team. Tonight, I want to share a story with you. It's a true story, but it's one that I'm guessing many of you have never heard before. It was new to me. It's one that I came across as I've been reading Dara Horn's new provocatively titled book, People Love Dead Jews. And there's a chapter in her book about a righteous Gentile whose name we all should know, Varian Fry. He was one of the very few American-born righteous Gentiles who, at great personal risk, saved the lives of Jews during the Shoah, during the Holocaust. Varian Fry's story is remarkable. In 1940, at the age of 32, Fry volunteered to go to Marseille on behalf of the Emergency Rescue Committee, which had been formed for the purpose of distributing emergency American visas to endangered European artists and intellectuals, most all of whom, of course, were Jewish. And over a period of 13 months, Fry helped save the lives of more than 2,000 people, among them such luminaries as Hannah Arendt, Marcel Duchamp, Marc Chagall, Max Ernst, Claude Lévi-Strauss, and André Breton. Fry died in 1967 and was honored by Yad Vashem posthumously in 1997. Now, I recommend reading Dara Horn's book. It's powerful, and it's painful, and it's important, and unfortunately, it's terribly relevant. Fry's story is fascinating, and it's almost worth getting the entire book just to read this one chapter about his life and about his story. But what I want to share with you tonight are two insights about Varian Fry that Dara Horn makes that I think are important. And since it's Shabbat, and I'm a rabbi after all, at the end I'll share a nechemta, a few words of comfort and hope, because it is a heavy topic, but it is connected to our Jewish calendar because of Kristallnacht. In her book, Horn describes a conversation that she had with Varian Fry's son, Jim. And she asked him what he thought motivated his father to take on this rescue mission, to leave his wife behind in America for more than a year at personal risk at times, because there is a moment when the United States actually pulls his credentials and he's really has to decide if he's going to stay in Europe or if he's going to come home. But why did he do that? To try to save these people. His son Jim admitted that some of it might have been motivated by Varian Fry's desire to save some of his cultural heroes. As Jim puts it, I'm sure some of it was to be important and to hang out with famous people. There's an amazing aspect of the story where he saves Marc Chagall's life. And again, I urge you to read it just to hear about how that happens. And maybe that's part of what inspired Varian Fry. He was a fan of the people whose lives he was trying to save. But there was something much deeper as well. We learn in the book that Varian Fry struggled with mental illness. And his son tells Horn this. He says, maybe you need to be a little unhinged to do something like what my father did. Now, what Varian's son suggests is actually truly horrifying. And it helps us understand a deeply troubling statistic about the Holocaust. Since the end of World War II, approximately 30,000 righteous Gentiles have been identified, a little less than that. And Horn says that even if we were off by a factor of 10 or even by a factor of 100, if you look at that number as a percentage of the population of Europe before the war, it's a staggeringly insignificant number of people who were willing to risk their lives. There were more than 500 million people living in Europe at the dawn of the war. And so this makes up something like 0.005% of the population. It's a rounding error. So what does it tell us? Almost nobody was willing to do what Varian Fry did. And it makes us ask the question, in the face of pure evil, why didn't more people come to our aid? And one conclusion that Horn suggests is that there is a madness to resisting evil. A person would practically need to be unhinged, as she puts it, to do what Varian Fry did. She also suggests that there are so many people who are unwilling to do such a thing for others at all the more so for Jews, because of the endemic anti-Semitism that is so much a part of our world. What's horrifying about all of this is that it suggests to us that if we as Jews believe that our fellow citizens will come to our aid if and when times truly get tough for us, we're the ones who are unhinged and deranged. More likely, it is that some will indeed come to our aid, but not so many as to be able to avert disaster. It will be a drop in the bucket. This is a depressing thought, and perhaps Horn is mistaken. Perhaps collectively we have learned the lessons of history, and perhaps the world has actually really changed. And perhaps as well, America is sui generis. America is a diaspora community unlike any other we've experienced. What happened there in Europe then could never, ever happen on a scale like that here. On the other hand, perhaps Dara Horn is right, and our future in America and in other diaspora communities depends on a small percentage of unhinged saviors who will risk their lives and the lives of their own families on our behalf. And that's frightening. The second insight from the Varian Fry story is about culture and what we choose to esteem and what we deem worthy of being rescued. What brought Varian Fry to Marseille was not simply a desire to rescue innocents who had been targeted by the Nazis and their collaborators, but a desire to rescue artists and intellectuals whose fame and renown made them particularly worthy of saving. We're talking about the likes of Marc Chagall. Horn points out, though, that there was no similar effort made by any governments or groups of well-meaning Gentiles designed to rescue Jewish religious culture. It's one thing to risk your life to save Western culture, as embodied by artists like Marcel Duchamp and Marc Chagall. But who was going, as Horn puts it, who was going to risk his life to save the culture of Hasidism with its devotion to ordinary, everyday holiness, or Misnagdism, the opposing religious movement within traditional Eastern European Judaism, whose energy in the years before the war was channeled into the rigorous study of Musar, or Jewish ethics. Entire academies devoted to the Musar movement were destroyed. Their books were burned, and their teachers and leaders and scholars were murdered. All the things that everyone feared would happen to the vaunted culture of Europe, but no rescue committee was ever convened on their behalf. Now, thankfully, much of that culture was ultimately preserved. And there are today, arguably, more Jews accessing Musar and Hasidic writings than ever before. We've had Musar classes here at the temple. We bring Hasidut into a lot of our sermons and into a lot of our classes as well. But Horn's point is an important one. Many people in this world esteem the contributions that individual Jews have made to Western culture, and we say the names of those artists and comedians and intellectuals of whom we are so proud because they've contributed so much to American culture, to European culture, to world civilization. But if we think for one moment that the world cares a whit about preserving Jewish culture, our tradition of learning, our liturgy, our art, our poetry, our music, we are mistaken. The world will not convene an emergency rescue committee for Judaism. So this has been heavy and depressing, but I promised words of hope and comfort as well, so here goes. First, while Horn is probably right that if and perhaps when push comes to shove, we'd be foolish to imagine that a vast army of righteous Gentiles would save us, it will likely once again be a small group of the unhinged who will risk life and limb on our behalf. But there is a significant X factor that exists today, and it's called Medinat Yisrael, the state of Israel. With diplomats, highly competent intelligence services, and a powerful army, Israel changes the equation. Our task, as I spoke about on Yom Kippur, is to redouble our efforts to remain connected with Israel, especially during this moment of frayed relationships, a time in which many Jews, especially younger Jews, feel less attached to Israel than previous generations. but by recommitting and re-engaging with Israel in a way that is eyes wide open, confronting all of the wonderful aspects and the challenging aspects as well. If we're able to do that, we can help to ensure that the bond between Israel and the diaspora will remain strong going forward. Through our efforts, in part, we can preserve that sense of what's called in Hebrew amiyut, peoplehood. It comes from the word am, like Am Yisrael Chai. Amiyut, peoplehood. We can preserve that, and it can help us in so many ways, not the least of which being the preservation of Jewish culture and our very existence. The second thing that gives me hope is that notwithstanding what we witnessed in Pittsburgh and Poway, notwithstanding the frightening and meaningful uptick in anti-Semitic incidents in America in recent years, from the left and from the right and from the middle too, I still believe that America is different and that we can help to ensure that it continues to be so by actively engaging with the non-Jewish world, by continuing the work of building bridges and building relationships. I really believe that we do make it more likely that if, and God forbid, when the time ever comes, America would end up being more like Denmark than like France. And one more word of hope that's taken from this week's Torah portion. Jacob models in Parashat Vayetze how we might navigate this challenging time. He's leaving home, fleeing a dangerous situation. He's had a terrible falling out with his brother. And night falls and Jacob goes to sleep. He has his famous dream of the ladder to heaven with angels going up and down it. And then God makes a promise to Jacob. In our Torah portion, God says, "Remember, I am with you. I will protect you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land." Now, in some ways, one could argue that God has not been faithful to this promise for Jacob's descendants. We have again and again very much not been protected. We've been as vulnerable as a people could be. Whether we are remembering Kristallnacht or the many tragedies of Tisha B'Av or Yom HaShoah, we are reminded of countless indignities, assaults, and acts of violence perpetuated against our people. How can we argue that God has been with us, protecting us wherever we go? But I want to suggest a different reading of that verse from this week's Torah portion. It doesn't mean, and it shouldn't be read to mean, that God will be there to protect us at every moment in the sense that nothing bad will ever happen to us. That's not what it means. It does mean that wherever we go, whatever does happen, God will be there with us. It's the faith that we are not alone because of a relationship we have with God and because of a relationship we have with our people. Collectively, we will endure, and we have. And that is true, and that is a fact. Yes, individual Jews have been oppressed and persecuted in ways that are unbearable to remember in some ways. But we as a people are so resilient that here we are, not just surviving, but in many, many ways thriving. After centuries of wandering, we have returned to our land. We have returned to sovereignty. And if we read that verse this way, then I think the promise is true. God has remained with us, and God has allowed us to come back to our land. And I find strength and hope and comfort in that reading. Our history includes, to be sure, many, many painful reminders, like the one we commemorated this week as we remembered Kristallnacht, of how vulnerable it is to be a Jew. It warns us not to count too heavily on the kindness of strangers willing to risk their lives on our behalf. But our story is also a story of extraordinary resilience, of grit, of a will to survive that is unsurpassed in the history of human civilization. It's a story also of self-preservation, of the preservation of our Jewish bodies, but also of our rich and glorious Jewish culture, which continues to be studied, and it continues to bring us inspiration, and we continue to add to it day by day. It's a story also of what one Zionist leader calls auto-emancipation, a story of a people who have the audacity to return to sovereignty in our historic homeland despite the risks and the price of that return to power. There is much to be concerned about, but there is so much to be hopeful for as well. Shabbat Shalom.
A song of kavod, honor, and of zichronot, of memories. Page 349. Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer le'olam, hachol ve'hayam, rish rush shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tefilat ha'adam, ha'chol ve'hayam, rish rush shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tefilat
We offer a special prayer for our nation in honor of Veterans Day. These words from Rabbi Josh Noble. Grant your blessing to those who, moved by the knowledge that all are created equal before you, dedicated their lives to the defense of this nation and its freedoms. God, bestow healing upon wounded warriors, peace upon troubled souls, companionship upon lonely hearts. May the legacy of their selflessness fill their lives with abundant joy and meaning. May their enduring commitment to duty, honor, and country always be remembered. With reverence and gratitude among our citizens from generation to generation, may their love for peace and their valor in war inspire us to build a nation in which all may safely drink from the chalice of freedom and repose. Help us to reward their sacrifice with a nation united and dedicated to freedom, to equality, to dignity, and to justice. And let us say together, Amen.
Amen.
A prayer for Midinat Yisrael, for the state of Israel, on page 259.
Avinu shebashamayim, tzur Yisrael v'gomalo, barich et Midinat Yisrael, reshit tzmichat geulatenu.
O Heavenly One, Protector and Redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love. Spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there, as we say, Amen.
Amen. Avinu shebashamayim, tzur Yisrael v'gomalo. Amen. Selah. Amen. Selah.
Our Shabbat services include sometimes heavy moments We have Kaddish coming up shortly, and I know there are people here who are in mourning, and there are joyous moments as well. We get ready to make Kiddush on page 5. Some folks have a birthday this week, so I'll invite you at home. If it's your birthday week, you can put your name in the chat, and we can wish you a happy birthday from afar. Anybody here in our sanctuary have a birthday this week?
Oh.
Happy birthday. Please stand up. Thank you so much, Cantor. And we're all going to end up standing up, but if you have your birthday, go ahead. How about an anniversary? Anyone celebrating an anniversary? Every week I've been looking up what day it is. There's a national day-to-day calendar, and today, most importantly, is National Donor Shabbat, and it made it onto this website. So when you came in, those of you who are here in our sanctuary, you got some literature about organ donation. We encourage you not just to give blood, because there's a blood shortage right now, but to make sure that you are an organ donor. If you're able to do platelet donations, my daughter did a stem cell donation. So many ways that you can help others, so please do that. It's also National Happy Hour Day, so if you like happy hour, stand up, okay? It's National French Dip Day. I don't know about that. And finally, it's Chicken Soup for the Soul Day, so if you like to have your soul, come on, stand up. Let's join together and give thanks to God for all the sweetness in our lives. Page 5.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotov v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho v'ava u'vratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit, ki hu yom techilo למקראי קודש, זכר לציון מצרים. כי באנו בחרת, ואותנו קידשת, מכל העמים. בשבת קודשך, באהבה וברצון, הנחתנו. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat.
L'chaim, everybody. You can remain standing for Aleinu L'Shabeach, which can be found on page 282.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
You can be seated. A poem on page 291 by Hannah Senesh, a young woman who was not just a wonderful poet, but a brave soldier. She parachuted into Czechoslovakia to try to save her fellow Jews during the Shoah. She was captured and put on trial and executed by the Nazis. And this poem, you can't believe that a 20-year-old had the sense of time and the perspective in some ways to write such a moving and powerful poem of memory. Yesh kochavim she'oram magia arza. There are stars up above, so far away, we only see their light long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people we have loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us. As we live our days, these are the ways we remember. If you are in a period of Shiva or Shloshim, the first 7 or 30 days of mourning, I'll invite you to please rise. Those of you joining from home, you can put the names of loved ones in the chat. If this is the first year of mourning for you, please rise. And if this Shabbat marks the yortzeit of the death of a loved one, please rise. If it's your custom to stand in solidarity with all the mourners, please do so now as we turn to page 294 and we give thanks and praise to God for the gift of life itself. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba.
Amen.
Bi'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael. B'agalau v'zman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevarach le'alam ulamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudesha barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush b'chata v'nechemata. Damiran be'alma v'imru Amen. Yehi shlama Rabba min Shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. May the one who makes peace in the high places make peace for us here on earth, for us and all Israel and all humanity. And let us say, Amen. You can be seated. Our closing song, and
It's the wrong page.
it's the wrong
So,
page.
Rabbi,
Yes.
thank you for your beautiful sermon.
Thank you, Cantor.
And we're working on getting Dara Horn to join our Wise Women book club. So please stay tuned. We're looking forward to that. And I just want to thank Brandon so much for adding your beautiful voice to our service, to Maestro and Jeff and our cantorial intern Josh, and to Mark and Margaret and Roz and Andre and Officer King, everybody who helped make this service possible. We are so blessed. We're going to end our service tonight on page 377.
And thank you, Cantor Lutz. We are so blessed to have you as our leader.
It's
Thanks,
my
everyone,
privilege.
for joining us. Let's give thanks for our nation. You can stand. Let's stand in honor. Thank you.